the former chief of the Australian Army. He's now a professor in strategic studies at the University of Canberra. He joins me live from the nation's capital. Thanks very much for being there, Mr. Lay.
Good to be with you, Peter.
Or Professor Lay, as it is now. I should get your title right. Let me get your views. You've been quoted in a piece on the front page of the Australian newspaper today with the heading, "Warning to quit sniping over Islam. Politics hinders the terror fight." Can you just take us through some of the concerns that you expressed when discussing these issues with the journalists from the Australian, presumably yesterday?
I had a broad discussion with the journalists, and I've got a bit of a concern with the story as it appeared in the newspaper, and that's really nothing to do with the journalist. I've been quoted quite properly in the newspaper, but I think some of the editorial work around the story has made a bit of a confusion about it. So let me be clear. My comment is around the fact that we currently have forces of the ADF deployed on operations. We're likely to have them deployed on counter-terror operations in support of other countries and a range of other things, and we need to have a debate about what we're doing, what our strategy is, what our exit strategy might be, and I'm seeing that debate shut down for personality politics and, frankly, the polemics of politics as we practice here in Australia.
Can you give us an example of that, Professor?
Well, I think there's one in the story where you see towards the end of the story that a federal Labor frontbencher has referred to the ex-Prime Minister Tony Abbott as Australia's Donald Trump. I don't think we need to be engaging in that sort of discussion. The Prime Minister has put, or the ex-Prime Minister has put forward a point of view, and I think it should be part of the debate, and rather sniped at and squashed, we should have that debate. Let's be sure that the debate's occurring in the Islamic world. The President of Egypt has made some comments about what needs to happen inside Islam. We've seen also comments from the Prime Minister of Malaysia. So if the Islamic world is able to have this debate, why can't we? And I think we should be encouraging everybody to be involved in this, because things will happen, change will occur, and I think we need to be informed for our own purposes so we can understand what's happening, but we might be also able to support people like the President of Egypt and the Prime Minister of Malaysia and other countries as they struggle with the nature of Islam and its conflict with radical Islamism, what the fundamentalists and the terrorists are doing to them, not just to us. Well, so let's have the debate.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to make the point that it's interesting that you say some of what you've just said there, because I do remember Tony Abbott in his comments referring to the President of Egypt, Assisi, in relation to what he said, which echoed the words of Tony Abbott. I also think that Tony Abbott saying these things and others within the government saying them, it also ensures that we don't have some breakaway party that is perhaps more akin to a Donald Trump figure, or perhaps going further back, a sort of a Pauline Hanson-esque figure. By keeping it in the tent, as you will, it becomes an open debate that doesn't fracture the party politic in this country. But as a follow-up question to that, though, if I can, Peter Lay, what about this notion, I talked about this yesterday on air, what about this notion that behind the scenes the security experts are apparently telling politicians in their briefings, please try to be cautious in what you do say publicly, because it makes it harder for us to deal with the Islamic community. I think the Grand Mufti, I saw comments online on the Australian newspaper, has said words to that effect as well in relation to this debate. What's your answer to that potential issue?
Well, I think the predilection should be about being open and honest and putting as much information out there as we can. And of course, there are some things that officials can't talk about or won't talk about, but they have to make those judgments. I think one of the concerns here is that there's a presumption that the intelligence agencies have got it all right, that they know best. Well, the intelligence agencies and security officials and others are just one source of advice to the politicians. Now, it's a long time since I've had access to highly classified information, but I do remember from my time in the Army that you had to gather information from as many places as you could, so the intelligence and security officials, but the politicians have their own sources of information. They have sources, I'm sure they talk to the Grand Mufti, they talk to Islamic leaders, and some of the politicians who work in the western part of Sydney, they've got excellent sources, and there's people like Dr. Jamal Rifi, who I think is doing just a wonderful job So politicians get information from a lot of people, and I think we should allow them to make the conclusions. But as I said at the start here, Peter, I think we should be talking about these things in a really open and frank way. If we don't, it's going to build up and there'll be tension and there'll be concern. But if we talk about it openly, we're going to get to a point we'll be able to agree to it. Of course, there can be some form of compromise in all of this. There is compromise in all forms of political discourse. So let's get the facts out there, let's get the ideas out there. Some of them will be discarded, but others will be picked up and will come to a much better answer in the end by being open and frank.
Looking